Welcome back. I'm Curtis Smith. This time of the year, as the winter ends and the spring begins, we've got a lot of differences in the New Mexico climate. Here in Albuquerque, we're really at the end of the cold gardening season. Yet in northern New Mexico, there are a lot of gardeners wondering what they can grow. Here in Albuquerque, we can see things like kale, which is just going out. We've got ornamental kales, which are attractive, but there are edible kales as well. There's leaf lettuce. This one's called Oakleaf. This is Deertongue. There are a lot of others. Right over here, we've got another one called red sail. We can look at that. It's another beautiful one. Looks good on a sandwich. And there are a lot of lettuces you could grow. Radishes, carrots, and things like that are good for the cool season. I see Rick Daniel over here by the cold frame. I wonder if he's got any questions. Rick, got anything to share with us here?
Hi. What I'm looking at here, these are some tomato plants that were planted indoors. You see they're coming up in the containers really well. They're probably getting, you know, the roots and stuff. You'll probably be able to, well.
They're not going to come out
They're not going to come out real easy right now.
They're ready to transplant, though.
They're ready to transplant. You'll notice that in here we've got, you know, some of these have 4 plants or so. We need to thin those out just a little bit, transplant them into some bigger containers. It's not ready. They're not quite ready to go outside. You could put them outside, but right now the weather is a little bit too cold.
It'd get them, wouldn't it?
Right. So we want to put them in some other containers and let them continue to grow.
And they're here in a cold frame so that they can harden off, become more adapted to the outside environment.
That's right. That's right. If you notice, whenever you do transplant your tomatoes, you need to keep them labeled well. That way, if you've got different varieties, you know what they are when you go to put them in your garden and everything. And this is just a good thing to do to keep those tomatoes off to a good start, so you can have your produce earlier in the year.
I can even look at the color of this and compare it to the color of those. These have been growing indoors, and it wouldn't take too much sunlight to burn them, whereas these are now pretty tough. They'll deal with the sunlight a lot better.
Right. Whenever this lid closes on this cold frame, you know, on these hot days, you can put a little bit of a shade or something over the top to keep the light from getting so bright if you need to.
When they get used to the cool nights, but in here it holds the heat so they don't freeze.
That's right.
Cold frames are a good thing to have in the garden.
That's right. Another question that we sometimes get, people are all the time asking, you know, they go and look at their plants, whether it be for their landscape or their garden, how much, you know, they'll see plants labeled they need a lot of sun or full sunlight or whatever.
Full sun, part shade, part sun,
right,
or full shade.
Right. What does that mean for New Mexico?
Here in New Mexico, we've got a lot of sunlight. Some plants that in other parts of the country need full sunlight can't tolerate it in New Mexico sunlight. So it's really bright here. And so we've got to really consider that, see how the plants are doing, judge from the conditions, and maybe provide a little extra water for some of these plants. But some plants will tolerate full sunlight and they'll do quite well. Some will actually do better. In fact, a lot of plants here do better if they've got afternoon shade. New Mexico is just a really bright and hot location.
Right. I've seen some plants that are labeled for full sunlight here, you know, in Albuquerque or parts of New Mexico actually do better if they get a little bit of that evening shade.
It's really good to have that shade.
Right.
And we can choose locations. We want to be real careful if we've got a site that's going to be in full sun all day, especially if there's a wall to the east of it, so it's getting full west sunlight, and then the heat off the wall, or a south wall, or on the south side of a wall, so they're getting a lot of reflected heat. Then we want to choose our plants very carefully. Make sure we've got plants that can really tolerate that. Those will be ones which are more adapted to a desert or a hot location.
Okay.
And one other factor here, because of our elevation, we tend to also run pretty high ultraviolet levels, and some plants will bleach out because of the UV light.
Is there anything else that you can do besides providing a little bit of shade or something for them? I guess
the main thing is the shade.
Okay.
And sometimes you're going to have so many hours, 4 to 6 hours of full sunlight, no matter what. But then you want the shade on the rest of the time, especially the afternoon.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Thanks for sharing these questions. These are things relevant all over the state. The north has a problem just as well as the south.